Hello there. Johnson critic Sunak or Secretary of State Truss? The Tories have until Friday to decide on Prime Minister Johnson's successor. In the last duel, both demonstrate different strategies. But who will succeed Boris Johnson? Next Monday, the Tories want to announce who the party base has picked as a new leader and thus also as a successor in Downing Street number 10. Now the two remaining candidates, Foreign Minister Liz Truss and former Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak, have had a final duel. Speaking to thousands of Conservative Tory members at Wembley Arena in London on Wednesday, the much-favoured Truss vowed that if she won, she would focus on consumer energy prices and stimulating the economy. Sunak avoided sharp attacks on Truss and rather differentiated himself from Johnson. He will lead a government that is run competently and seriously and that has decency and integrity at its core. This is the change I will bring. This is the Prime Minister I will be, he said. The approximately 200,000 members of the Conservative Tories will decide on Johnson's successor at the top of the party in a runoff election that will run until Friday. The winner is to be announced on Monday, as I said, who will then take up the office of Prime Minister the following day. In polls, Truss is well ahead of her rival Sunak. British politics has been a lesson in torture over the past month. That's how columnist Simon Jenkins commented in the Guardian newspaper. The election campaign has so damaged both candidates that Tory members and the public in general would seem to prefer even a discredited Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, he said. There was temporary talk of a civil war within the Conservative Party. At the beginning of the duel, there was such acrimony that some observers believed the Tories could no longer put themselves together for the time being. Prime Minister Johnson resigned in early July after an internal party revolt against his much criticized leadership as party leader. Dozens of Conservative MPs had previously resigned from government offices in protest at his leadership style. During his 3-year tenure, Johnson had to justify himself because of numerous scandals, including the Partygate affair about illegal lockdown celebrations at the seat of government. Ultimately, it was his undoing that he had heaved a party colleague into an important Parliament group office, even though he knew of allegations of sexual harassment against the man. A lot has changed again, though, but the long-running election campaign that began with Johnson's July 7 announcement of his withdrawal is crippling the country at a time when it desperately needs leadership. Inflation is over 10% and rising, energy prices will probably quadruple soon, Brexit is far from over, and there's the Russian war against Ukraine. These are just the absolute top issues that the new Prime Minister has to deal with from day one. There are also internal concerns. The biggest challenge for the newcomer to Downing Street is Boris Johnson. That was said by political scientist Matthew Flinders from the University of Sheffield. Because the outgoing Prime Minister sees himself unfairly thrown out of office. Johnson will not silently disappear from the stage, says Flinders in an interview with a German press agency. Most of those who follow the race believe that the new one will be called Liz Truss. She was doing repeatedly so well ahead of Sunak in the polls that his victory would now be a sensation. What he still has to cling to is that pollsters often point out how difficult it is to gauge the mood of the Conservative Party. Because, the Tories do not make any documents available to the public about their members. It's not even known exactly how many people are allowed to take part in the vote. It is estimated that up to 200,000 party members will decide on the next Prime Minister. That's around 0.3% of the total population. Predominantly white, male, over 60, and from the more affluent southern England. This group seems to have been convinced by Truss. An expert Flinders calls this part of the competition a high jump. She has to jump over a very high bar to win the party leadership. But what is particularly difficult is the long jump that follows. in which the foreign minister has to convince a much larger group, not lager, that's, I would love a lager now, but it's a larger group. That could be much more difficult because the right-wing conservative course driven by Truss is unlikely to arrive in many areas of England, and especially in the traditionally Tory critical parts of Scotland and Wales, and not to talk about the Red Wall. A breath of fresh air is also needed for the staff. She will inherit from Johnson one of the lightest, most inexperienced cabinets in recent history, said columnist Jenkins. Johnson has always treated his ministers like, a cobbled-together fan club. In addition, Truss has so far been considered rather awkward in public appearances. The difference to the populist Johnson, who is well received in pubs and cricket grounds with his jovial manner, is immense. She has to show that she can dance, says Flinders. That reminds me of May, by the way. So, whether she can get along with the people on the street, but she still has some time. The next parliamentary elections must take place in January 2025 at the latest. After the scandal-ridden Johnson era, however, the Tories are far behind the Labour Party in the polls. And there's one more add-on here. The Queen Elizabeth II will receive the new British head of government at her Scottish country estate in Balmoral. The monarch will first welcome outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson for an audience next Tuesday, and then his successor. That's how the British news agency PA reported this. According to all polls, as I said, it's likely that that will be Secretary of State Liz Truss. The fact that the audience will take place in London, not in London's Buckingham Palace, but in the Scottish Highlands, where the Queen is on holiday, is extremely unusual. The decision should fuel concerns about the health of the 96-year-old, but I wish her all the best. And so we have still a few days of wait ahead of us. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.